Welcome, everybody, to this new episode of CCIR's Student Spotlight Series. With me today is Yiyi Liu from Appleby College in Toronto, Canada. During her time at CCIR, Trinity attended the Future Scholars Program, and in particular, she took Dr. David Bellin's course on neuroscience of motivation and decision-making. Dr. Bellin is a current faculty member at the University of Cambridge, and for her final project, Trinity focused on looking into the role that sleep disturbances may play in Alzheimer's disease. First things first, Trinity, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So Trinity, let me just begin by asking you a little bit about how it is that you first got interested in, I guess, broadly the field of cognitive science, neuroscience, and psychology. Sort of what drew you to this particular area of study in the first place?
Yeah. So, I've always been interested in psychology and how there's different reasons, like scientific reasons behind different behaviors of people. And I took a summer course last year in animal psychology, and I found that to be really interesting and how there is a relationship correlation between animals and human psychology. And so I've just been researching like online about different opportunities for me to get involved more in this field. And I saw CCIR, and there's also some people that I knew who have taken this program before. So they told me that they had a great experience and they recommended me. So I just went on the website and looked over like different topics for the courses. And I thought that it would be interesting because I've already done like some about animal psychology, and I would also like to go um, to learn something in human psychology just to broaden my vision in the field. So I chose a bunch of like courses related to like psychology and neuroscience. And I was like eventually I was chosen into because we have different options for courses, and then eventually I was assigned to this course with Dr. David Bellin. Yeah, that's how I ended up in the course.
Excellent. And if you can just very briefly give us a sense of what Dr. Bellin's course was ultimately about. So the title of the course is Neuroscience of Motivation and Decision Making. So Trinity, if you can just give us a quick overview of, for those of us who are uninitiated, a little overview of what exactly the neuroscience of motivation and decision making actually consists in. Sort of what topics you guys covered? What is the neuroscience of decision making and motivation?
Yeah. So I was kind of worried at first for not like being able to understand the course because it was like a lot of professional like information. But luckily, like everyone in my course, we all didn't have much previous experiences in neuroscience. So Dr. David Bellin, he explained everything in a very straightforward way. So we first just cover everything in kind of a very basic level on how motivation plays a really important role in like directing decision makings. And then we went into the role of hypothalamus in motivation. So it can play a role in um, directing hunger, feeling of hunger and satiety, and also um, sexual behaviors and thirst and other other decision making processes. And um, we also went we also looked at some experiments that scientists have done before that's like really groundbreaking in the neuroscience field about decision making. And we looked at some technologies in like um, picturing and like lesions about like seeing more about the micro like levels in neuroscience. So I think we went into the harder part in like the later half of the course for all the like the microbiology going on for neuroscience, and we went into like how like neurotransmitters works and different parts of the hypothalamus works.
And I'm curious, in the early parts of your course, as you guys were going through these topics, what were the topics that most gripped your interest? Like, what was sort of the most interesting thing the most interesting lectures that you got with Dr. David Bellin?
Yeah, so I remember there was one lesson that we talked about dopamine, because dopamine is like a really big thing for not just like neuroscience, but it's also like for people who didn't know much about this when they first think about like neuroscience and like brain motivations, they will think about the role of dopamine. And um, so our professor told us that like it's people always think about dopamine is correlated with positive feelings and emotions, but we went through some experiments, and it's actually turned out that dopamine is not just um, like pleasure and happiness, but it can also relate to like um, negative feelings, but um, it's correlated with decision making in general, but it's not just purely happiness. So that's a very new things for me to learn, and I got really interested in it.
Hmm, interesting. And I'm curious also, so as you were saying earlier, the project that you eventually chose to focus on had to do with sleep deprivation or sleep
Yeah.
patterns and Alzheimer's. How did you eventually land on this particular topic of research?
So we were brainstorming about topics that we wanted to do for our project throughout the course. And then um, so I was thinking about, because um, like in nowadays life, students are always deprived of sleep. And when I was doing the course, I was in a very busy schedule. So I always lack sleep. And I want to do something related to like how sleep deprivation or disturbances can have an effect on um, our brain, and what is the science behind it. And so originally, I wanted to do specific um, stages of sleep, and how like um, a disturbance in each like in different stage can have an effect on um, their mental health and like ability to make decision or like to perform well. But I had a hard time like just digging into each stage and how it can have different effects. So I shifted a little bit to just sleep with neurodegenerative diseases. So there's much more information about that. And originally I was thinking of doing like multiple diseases. So I did like Alzheimer's, Huntington's, um, and Parkinson's. And like a uh, we had a course that we had one session that's designated to like presenting our ideas to the professor. And it turns out that like the thing that I wanted to do was too broad, or like there's too much information to cover. And the professor suggested, they said that it's really nice that I have these ideas. But they said that it will be a little bit like ambitious to cover all of these. So I just focus on only Alzheimer's, uh, like ultimately, and ended up doing like sleep disturbances and its relationship to Alzheimer's disease.
And tell us a little bit about what you ended up finding. So you focused on sleep disturbances and Alzheimer's. What were some of the surprising or interesting findings that you discovered in the research process?
Yeah, so I did my project in like in the form of like a lit review. And I looked over like different researches about like the onset of Alzheimer's, and different reasons behind it and the symptoms of it. Um, and then I found some, like for background, I found some information of um, for Alzheimer's, things that indicated it in like an early onset can be some biomarkers such as um, like vascular um, vessels diseases and damage in the brain, and also the presence of amyloid, beta, and phosphorylated tau in the brain. And it can also be genetic, but like more research has to be done on like the specific genes that's related to like direct causation of Alzheimer's. And then, but I found that all of these have like some correlation with sleep. So like I have found that sleep deprivation have a correlation with um, phosphorylated tau and beta amyloid accumulation, because during sleep um, we have the process of like our brain and the system helping to wash over all the waste in our body and brain. Um, but if we're deprived of sleep, um, or our sleep is fragmented, then the process cannot be done, and the waste will accumulate it, and which will eventually leads to Alzheimer's. And then I also found that specific specific sleep diseases like insomnia, it will have an effect on like um, it will have an effect on the neurons and its activities. So um, sometimes these diseases will result in a loss of neurons and damage in specific areas in the brain. And these areas are, um, through previous experiments, are found to be correlated with um, the areas that might be damaged for Alzheimer's patients. Um, yeah, and then an important part of my research is that like all the researchers have stated that it's a bidirectionality for the relationship between sleep and Alzheimer's. Like you can say that we can say that it's sleep that causes Alzheimer's, or Alzheimer's that causes sleep. So like I just looked over all the researches, and I couldn't came to like 100% sure conclusion about like how sleep disturbances is causing Alzheimer's. That's what I was originally trying to fine, but it turns out not to be like that. And like there's a lot of complicated reasons, and like their relationship is very complicated. Um, yeah, so like basically, my conclusion is that sleep disturbances has caused like a lot of damages um, and biomarkers that is related to Alzheimer's. And it's important to look more into sleep so that it's easier for us to spot these biomarkers that can potentially lead to Alzheimer's. And we can put more efforts into like learning how an improvement of sleep schedule can improve or like help us avoid getting like neurodegenerative disease um, and how that can benefit people.
Mm. I I want to pick up on a thread here that you seem to have been mentioning is that you were talking about this earlier about dopamine as well, but
Mhm.
um, a theme that is emerging seems to be that things, as soon as you research them, turn out to be way more complicated than you
Yes.
would expect. I wonder how this theme has shaped your understanding of science, of research, of what it means to participate in sort of this shared pursuit of knowledge. How has your experience of doing research shaped your understanding of these things?
Yeah, I think this is a very valuable experience for me to be able to do this research with CCIR because um, in the course, we not only learn about the contents, like just for neuroscience, but we also learn about like skills to research and to read papers. And the professor and TA had taught us like about citing papers and like how to read papers more efficiently. Um, and I like myself, um, I'm also doing a like course at school that's related to like researching. And I think just like doing research in high school, it might be really hard because like as you said, as we like go into it, it turns out to be really complicated, and then there's like a whole bunch of information in front of us, and like often it's really hard for me to know which one to pick, and like I will just be finding this and then suddenly think about another topic that I might want to do. Um, but it's good to have this experience for like right now because I know that probably in university we'll be doing like a lot of researches, and this is preparing me really well for like just basically knowing how this works. Like right now, I know there's like the different parts of a formal like research paper that I should have, and how to like efficiently go over a 20 pages research paper and find the things that I need for my paper. And I also think that like it's a good way to practice our like critical thinking because when we are writing a paper, it's always like we have something that we're interested, and then it's a thing that's like more debatable so that we can have a stand and try to prove it. And then we go into all these like um all the information online and try to pull like different parts from other people and from like expert in the field. And as we do that, we gain more knowledge in the field and not just about like what we wanted to prove, and but also like a whole bunch of other things that might like popped up in the research that we've went through. And I just think like it's a really interesting experience. It's definitely like pretty time consuming, and but I think it's very worth it.
I think that's a great transition actually to what, so we're coming up on sort of the half hour mark here.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask you the question that I ask all the students as a way of sort of wrapping up. And the question is pretty simple. It's just this. So Trinity, you have gone through the whole process of the 13-week intensive, twice a week, write your research paper. You've spent a lot of time. I imagine there were moments of confusion, despair, hopelessness, frustration that comes with doing research. Um, a lot of students will see this process. They're high school students who've never done research before, and they'll be a little bit daunted by the prospects of doing something at this level of intensity, at this level of depth. What would you say to a student who is, let's say, interested in research, but a little bit afraid of what all research might entail? What sorts of advice, what sorts of warnings? Don't do it. What sorts of words of wisdom do you have to say to these students now that you've gone through the whole process?
Yeah, I was definitely one of them because I was kind of scared when, like, at first when we had to do it. But as I said, um, the professor was really kind, and then he really understand that like we're most of us haven't had like a lot of experience in the field, and he will explain everything very patiently. And we also had the TA session after our lesson every time. And the TA will explain anything that we don't understand. And we can also just contact the professor and the TA at any time. Like we can email them and they will get back to us on things that we didn't understand. And we also like we can book one-on-one meeting with them, despite like this is a group course. Um, we can just book one session with them, and they will spend time with us just talking individually about project or just things in general that we don't understand. And and I also think like don't be stressed about like not being able to understand it because um like we're probably going over very complicated topics in a short span of time, and the professor also didn't expect us to understand everything, but it's good that we get to know about these information and topics. And when you don't understand, just ask. And the students in the group are also really helpful, and like we have a really harmonic atmosphere, I would say, in our class. And it's just not like don't feel pressure at all for like being in the course, and have a mindset of being able to learn more new things and getting into this field that you're interested in.
I'm a little bit curious about this because I hear this more often than I expect, but I'm curious about your relationship with the other students in the class. Are you guys still in touch? Did you actually manage to make some fellow nerdy neuroscience friends through the program?
We we didn't contact each other after the course ended, but it
Mhm.
was just I think we had a like really nice like vibe there when we were learning together,
Mhm.
because we like our group we had a hard time like scheduling for lessons. There was like one or two lessons where like everyone had some conflicts um with, and we had to reschedule. So everyone was like being really understanding, and we sent like emails to schedule for a meeting, and like we make the professor was willing to make up a lesson for us like after he missed it for some event. And um the professor and the TA was also Like they're really, really nice and patient. Um, and every time we had a question, they're really happy, and
Mhm,
they're just like they encourage us to ask questions, and they'll answer.
mhm. That's really fantastic to hear. And I want to also echo something that you were saying earlier about sort of feeling like you can't understand or you can't do the project. I think one thing that's really important to emphasize here is something that another student said the other day that I thought was very true, which is that in some sense, you can't really fail. As
Yeah,
long as you're learning, as long as you're growing, as long as you're picking up new skills, even if, and God forbid, you end up not finishing your project or your experiment doesn't work out, your research ends up in a dead end, you've still gone through a process where you've picked up new skills, new knowledge, you've grown, you've suffered.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah. And so, in many senses, you really, really can't fail with a course like this, especially if the environment is right and people are supportive.
Yeah.
Um, so, Trinity, I want to say thank you so much for it's been wonderful learning a little bit about your experience at CCIR, your perspective, your research, how you've grown through this process. I want to say once again, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the best in your future intellectual, academic, and scientific, or non-intellectual, non-academic, and non-scientific endeavors.
Thank you so much.